that. Now this is a new plant.
I think so.
They haven't been growing much, but all those are going to be some sort of a seed. If we find one, see if we can find one. Look at how symmetrical. There's just patterns in that.
It's a little like the beehive.
Ah, beautiful.
Honeycombs.
Here's one that looks like it's getting older. Always look for older ones to see if you can find the seeds in there. Let's
So
pull
is
this
that,
one off.
that's, these other ones that you just pointed to are going to turn into that more with the little flowers
Yeah,
on them?
they'll get more. They'll come out yellower.
Oh, I would have thought
Like-
that this would have been the
and
younger
more
one.
mature.
And
See, like these are getting more mature. This hasn't put their flower out yet. Their petal part.
okay.
But this one, let's see if we can find.
And
some
this one
seeds
must
in
be really young.
it. Yeah,
The purple one.
still coming forward. But in order to make a seed, all plants, have a flower. Flower parts. These are the petals, the flower parts. They have different parts of the thing, of the plant that eventually lead towards this base, which is the seed, starting with the seed. And now, because we'll come back and look at these when they're more mature, and we'll see that that is really the seed there, but it still has the flower on top. It's like hundreds of little flowers all together. And that's the flower. Whoops, I just dropped the flower. There it is, right there. And you get to study botany in 5th grade. You'll see that those are the flower.
Oh, it's so tiny. It's so
Yeah.
tiny. I can hardly even focus on it.
It's like thousands of flowers put together in one head.
Wow.
And see there, this is a radish that wants to flower, wants to go to seed. It struggles, it strives. Every plant strives to go to seed. It wants to seed itself. So it's putting a flower out first, and then eventually that flower will turn to that long seed pod we saw earlier. It'll keep putting out. See these? It'll keep putting out pods. See, this is the beginning of those pods. And that's actually the beginning of the flower. And the pods form right underneath here. They're really tiny right now, but they'll grow. And so when you look out over and you see all these flowers, they're really their biggest effort and the most important thing for them is to put a flower that will eventually turn to a seed, and we'll drop it into the ground and keep going. Here's these long seed pods. There's the seed pod, and the flower was there. These aren't mature yet, but if you go further
Oh.
down,
So it's like this little stem is going to mature into this
Yep.
long seed pod.
yeah, and it's really called the pistil
Oh.
of the plant, and that's where the flower was, right there at the very end. And this is where it got pollinated, and then it grew. This part grew into a.
So can you talk a little bit about how the bees help with all of this process?
Well, if you look, you can see the flies and the bees on here. They are helping. They want to get the pollen. And here, if you brush your finger at that, you'll get this little yellow dust. They love that. That's pollen. That's like protein for them. So they'll go on there, and they'll get the pollen off. But then also deep down within the bottom, under here, down in there, there's little nectar juice, little sweet juice that they siphon out, they suck out. And when they're doing that, they've got pollen on their legs, and they spread that pollen to another flower. And now it's called pollinating the flower, which they need the flowers need pollen on some of their flower parts to make that seed pod grow. Okay, see the zucchini grows at the base of the flower. See that? Here's the zucchini, and here's the flower. And if we open up the flower, we're going to see that this is where the bees were pollinating. They come in there and they have pollen on their feet. That pollen goes down and helps develop seed in here. And now this year, if this bee came from a different kind of zucchini, that's maybe the striped zucchini instead of the solid color, and it pollinated a solid color plant, this seed would be a mix between, it'd be a different kind of variety altogether. And it's pretty interesting how, if I wanted it just to be this kind of zucchini next year, when I took the seed from this particular squash, I would have to have taken pollen from one of these plants with my finger, stick it on there, and closed it. Right before this opened, I would have done that, and then closed it with a bag so no other bee could get on it. And then it would be that kind of a squash.
Oh, that's smart.
So all these flowers in here are cross-pollinating with different kinds. There's about 3 different kinds of zucchinis in here. So I couldn't
yeah, these
depend
are
on
all
that kind
zucchini.
growing next year if I took the seeds from the fruit itself.
So some things that are harder to control, that you just want to order seeds from somebody else whose job it is
Who's already
to
did that.
grow seeds.
That's
yeah.
what the seed companies do.
Yeah.
They're good at quarantine kind of their plants.
Oh, we know about quarantines now, don't we?
So nothing gets it.
Separating ourselves from everybody else.